Hey everyone, welcome back to Trek on the Tube. As promised, this is a short breakdown video going over what I think of the first chapter of Star Trek Discovery's first season. I'm calling it first chapter because that's what CBS are going with. Chapter 1 of Season 1. The next 6 episodes that we're going to get after the break are Chapter 2. This isn't going to be too long or too in-depth, simply because the season isn't over, and since the creative team working on the show have promised that everything would make sense once the season ends, I think it's only fair to wait until then to actually start going all in. There are, however, a few things we can talk about before then, and so we shall today. Before I begin, I've made sure this video contains no major spoilers, which means if you haven't seen Discovery yet and you're on the fence, this may help you make up your mind. Just for the fun of it and to change things up a little, instead of using screen caps from the episodes like I did in my previous videos, today I'll be using behind the scenes photos. Okay, first of all, if you want a quick answer, yes, I think the show is good. But I do have mixed feelings, and I think that's mostly due to the fact the show actually has me quite confused. Let me explain. For example, this was supposed to be the story of Burnham, a Starfleet first officer, but it's not. Sure, most of the episodes revolve around her and her decisions, but I think everyone can agree at this point that the Stamets or Lorca stories are much more interesting. And the thing is, concerning Burnham, she's not a first officer. She's not even in Starfleet anymore. She's a convicted felon. I'm not saying I don't like Burnham. I've come to appreciate the character despite her flaws, and I think Sonequa Martin Green's performance is very good. A little shaky in the pilot maybe, but we're all past that now. It's just, the show was presented one way, and we seem to be getting it another way entirely. Concerning the Klingons, I don't think we're going to have an in-universe explanation for the way they look. This is their appearance in Discovery, and I suppose I can live with that, but I can't help ask the question, why? What was the point of changing them? Everything that was done in this first chapter regarding the Klingons could have been done with a more traditional design. It was explained that they had no hair because of some sort of sensory capability, and it was an interesting concept. But as I said before, it's all very confusing because not once is this element used on screen or even talked about. Discovery, exploration, new worlds, new villains. These were the things promised, or more to the point, used to promote the series, and yet we got none of that. Even more troubling, the season was supposed to be about the war, and we didn't even get that. We only just got a few battles. It seems like there's a clear disconnect between what the show was supposed to be and what it actually turned out to be. But I suppose this only counts if you actually cared about and watched all the promotional content. If I were to put myself in the shoes of someone who simply watched the series as it came out, maybe my perception would be quite different. So, at face value, without talking about what was promised or what was expected, what do I think of these first 9 episodes? Well, the production value is amazing. The sets, the props, the CGI, the location filming, all of it blew my mind. It really is incredible to have something this high quality on TV. The costume's also very good. Most of the makeup is as well. At times I felt like the Klingons weren't very real, and Saru somehow feels off. I think it's the way his mouth doesn't quite close. It doesn't seem natural, but other than that, it was all great. The characters are amazing. Sure, they're not all likable, but they have depth, and every actor is doing a really good job so far. I would argue that having the Klingons speak in Klingon wasn't necessarily the best of decisions. Actually, no, it makes sense that the Klingons would speak in their own language, it's just that there was too much. The actors, Chris Obie aside, struggled to convey their emotions when speaking in Klingon, and ultimately, the best Klingon moment so far was Cole speaking in English. The performance was more menacing, it had more impact. Story-wise, it's not bad at all. On a day-to-day basis, this is the show I talk about the most, and that's not just because I'm a Trekkie. People at my job that I don't know are watching the show and talking about it, amongst themselves or sometimes to me. There's plenty of speculation, plenty of intrigue, and in that respect, the show has been very successful, on par with Game of Thrones or The Walking Dead. Again, I think the Klingon plotline is the weakest. The ship itself is much more interesting. Taken into consideration, often first seasons of any TV show are pretty weak. I'd say Discovery is doing quite well. Personally, I can't help but feel a little underwhelmed. A lot of things have happened, yet we haven't seen that much, if that makes sense. But as I said, this is only the first season of the show, and maybe I'm expecting too much, simply because there's a whole franchise to back it up. In conclusion, by itself, as a new TV series in 2017, Discovery is off to a pretty good start. I can easily see it gaining momentum and bringing in new fans to the Star Trek universe. If the objective was to attract a general audience and create intrigue, then the mission is a success. As a Trekkie, however, I would argue the story isn't quite good enough to excuse the liberties that have been taken. To make this simple, I think a new fan will look at this first chapter and think this is awesome, whereas a Trekkie will think this can be awesome if you can make it fit with what came before. Okay, there are a few other very important points I'm going to talk about, but only when the season ends, so patience. As I said earlier, the story they're trying to tell isn't yet over, and you never know, we might just be surprised. I'm not going to do any theory crafting or speculation today simply because the season picks back up very soon. But if you want, we could do some of that in the full season breakdown. So tell me, what do you think of Discovery? Have you seen it? Will you watch it? I'm very interested in knowing what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and as always, live long and prosper.